Hello, welcome back. How have you been? Good, good. So how was your week since I last saw you? Tell me about it. And don't mind me, I'll just be taking notes as usual, but it's just so I can kind of look back on our session, so I'm just listening to what you have to say. Okay, well, congratulations on that. Oh, wonderful. And just generally with like work related things. Okay, so that's kind of the same as last time. I could see that. Yeah. And do you have any, why do you think that is, if you have any idea? Yeah. No, definitely that can influence it. Okay, and then how have you been sleeping? So still kind of having issues, and the dreams. You kind of have the reoccurring dream. Okay. How does it make you feel when you wake up? Okay. So maybe not entirely great, but not the worst. Right, yeah. Well, that's awesome that you've been doing that. And it takes a lot of strength to think on that and the self-reflection. You mentioned with the anxiety, sort of reflecting on, maybe not reflecting, ruminating on past events. Do you think that's kind of been happening a lot? Okay, so you might be thinking about something for a long time. Okay, and you have all these kind of negative self-thoughts. Yeah, well, that's definitely, everyone kind of goes through that. You may have something happen, and consciously or subconsciously you start to think about yourself or the world differently, especially over time. Or if it's a bigger event, it can like really solidify in your brain. So I actually picked this out last time, but I thought after what you said, it would be great to do. So it's a CBT exercise. Are you familiar with CBT? Okay, a little bit. Yeah, so mainly my focus I do is DBT, that's dialectical behavioral therapy. CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. It's a little bit different. It focuses on, how do I explain it? Maybe kind of retraining your thoughts. Yeah. So this is an exercise from that. The thought record sheet. So if you don't mind, I can just kind of explain how this works to you, and then you can tell me if you think it'd be helpful, and then we could go through it together if you'd like. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, it's totally something you can do on your own, but like with any of these sort of exercises or things with DBT, it's always helpful to have someone facilitate, especially if you come across some difficult emotions as you go through it. Okay, so yeah, the thought record sheet. There's 7 columns, 7 steps to this exercise. So you start, and sorry, I'm referencing a sheet here. That's what's so handy about the like CBT DVDs that they come with the workbooks and the guides, so you can really always just look up, like, if you forget how to do something, it's tangible. Okay, so step 1 is identifying the situation or the trigger. The questions it includes are: what happened, where, when, how. So you describe the situation that triggered the emotion. So I'm going to give an example throughout so you can kind of get the gist of how it works. So let's say you had an argument, or let's say you're talking to someone and they say something really hurtful, and you started crying and left without saying anything back. Okay, so that's the situation. The next step is feelings and emotions and body sensations. So, what emotion did I feel at the time? What else? How intense was it? What did I notice in my body? Where did I feel it? So, for my example, I might say, I felt really sad. I felt hurt. I felt embarrassed. Anxious, you can list all the feelings you felt. And then it's kind of similar. You want to avoid doing this in this step. The next step is unhelpful thoughts and images. So, what went through my mind? What disturbed me? What did those thoughts, images, or memories mean to me or say about me or the situation? What was the worst thing that could have happened? So yeah, unhelpful thoughts are like basically what comes up that's like what you start to ruminate on. So for example, I go from feelings, I was feeling sad, anxious. In this one I would say, I felt like everyone hated me. I felt like the world was gonna end. I felt like helpless in this situation. I felt like I was a crybaby. So that sort of thing. Yeah. Is this a true story? I can't say. Okay. So the next step then is facts that support the unhelpful thought. Now this one is kind of tricky because you actually have to kind of look for the justifications for those. So facts. I did cry in front of everybody. So I'm kind of struggling to think, but do you kind of get the idea of that step? Yeah, well, it's not trying to solidify those unhelpful thoughts, like it's not trying to make you believe they're true. The whole point of it, and the general kind of point of CBT, I think I said CBT earlier, I don't know, sometimes I say CBD. Anyways, it's CBT. Is getting like a well-rounded sort of point of view. So you're not trying to really tell yourself like, oh yeah, no, everything's fine. Because often that's really hard to believe and it may not be true, Sometimes we do make mistakes or hurtful things are said. And so yeah, we're looking at the facts. But then the next step is facts that provide evidence against the unhelpful thought. What facts do I have that are unhelpful? What facts do I have that are unhelpful, that the unhelpful thoughts are not totally true? Is it possible that this is an opinion rather than a fact? What have others said about this? So then you're kind of looking at the opposite point of view based on your thoughts. So that would be like, my friend afterwards said that what was said actually would have made them cry too. Or, no one's mentioned it since then. So obviously, that would be kind of saying, oh, well, maybe not everyone thinks that I'm a embarrassing crybaby. Okay, and then the next step is alternative, more realistic, and balanced perspective. So, stop, take a breath, What would someone else say about the situation? What's the bigger picture here? Is there a different way of seeing it? What advice would I give someone else? Is my reaction in proportion to the actual event? Is this really as important as it seems? So then you're stepping back and you're looking at the facts and you're kind of now thinking like, how do I come up with a better perspective? So in my example, I'd be like, someone said something hurtful to me, and I'm a sensitive person, and I like that about myself, so I did cry. You know, some people may have judged me, but that's okay. And then the very last step, so step 7, is just the outcomes. You reevaluate your emotions. So what am I feeling now? What could I do differently? Yeah. So this can be really helpful to not ruminate over something, so not dwell on in your head. If you're up at night thinking, oh, I did this, or feeling heartbreak, regret, guilt, things that really sit with you for a long time, or even before it sat with you for a long time, if something happens, to be able to have the skill and the foresight to use something like this before it can sort of cement deeper into you. And then eventually, and this is the goal, you get better at doing this quickly and in your head. So you get better at kind of fact-checking your unhelpful thoughts and looking at the world from a more balanced perspective, less black and white. Yeah. So, sorry, I've kind of been explaining this for a while, but do you think this would be helpful? You'd like to try it? Sure. Okay. So, do you have something in mind, like an event you'd like to try it with? Okay. Oh, yeah, sure. You can look at it. And, I will write. And I can give what I write to you as well at the end, if you would like to look it over. Okay, so first, which situation or trigger would you like to talk about? Okay, I think that'd be a good one because you mentioned it a few times. Okay, so what happened where, go ahead and tell me the details. Okay. And then, okay, that's all. Okay. And so the next one is feelings, I think. Yeah, emotions. Okay. So yeah, you can just list off the emotions. Okay. Yeah, totally. It's like what you felt. So even if it doesn't have a name, like anger, you could say like how you felt in your body sensations. Okay. Yeah, well, and that was really a great description. So, okay, so some unhelpful thoughts and images that come to mind. Yeah, really kind of like go back and think what images and thoughts came to mind. Okay. Yeah, well, those are all thoughts that someone could have in that situation. Okay, and so the next one is, yeah, facts that support those unhelpful thoughts. think that could be true, but definitely want to stick to the facts because you don't want to kind of like distort what actually happened. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's good. We can leave it at that. And then we're gonna do the opposite. So facts that provide evidence against your unhelpful thoughts. So, so kind of like what I was just saying. It's like, was that actually a fact, or was there something else that? Right. Yeah. Okay. And then yeah, another one of the questions was like, what would someone else say about it? So that's often a good way, even if someone else didn't say something about it. You can step out of yourself and sort of say like, oh, if I, from the outside looking in, you know, like if I were someone else, how would I have? That's certainly true. Yeah, no, these are great. Okay, so now using that, you can sort of, it says stop, take a breath. Also, that's definitely like what you want to do when you're alone before you just speed right through it. But, you know, we've been kind of talking it over, so now you come up with a more balanced, realistic perspective. So, yeah, just kind of like an overall, like, so in my example, oh yeah, I'm a sensitive person. They said something hurtful. It made me cry. You know, people may have thought what they thought, but that's okay. Or, you know, something along those lines. Sure. No, take your time. Definitely. Okay, so and then last, how are you feeling now? Kind of just like your emotions, your feelings, and body sensations. Yeah, well, and that's totally okay. It's not the point of the exercise is, or at least here with me, it's not to just be like, oh yeah, I'm feeling better. That's been one of my troubles with therapy overall. Yeah. Just and any sort of exercise with this is I'm tempted to be like, yeah, no, I'm better, when I'm not. Like, my emotions haven't changed. But I think it's much better to be honest and then go back and say, okay, well, what is still hurting then? Or like, what is still bothering me? Rather than just trying to fit it and be like, no, I'm good. So you're saying you're still kind of feeling a little bit of that anxiety or maybe guilt, or okay, yeah. Totally. Yeah, well, yeah, especially because you've been mulling it over for so long, it can still have those residual emotions. So another thing I just want to, I guess, leave you with is the importance of, you know, mindfulness and mindful meditation for those feelings. So exercises like this are great to actually address the feelings and really unpack them. But then on sort of the opposite side, and something that's equally important, is to be able to look at your thoughts and not engage. if you imagine that you're sitting by a river, you're just sitting by a river, and let's say you're either trying to focus on your mindful breathing, you're just trying to focus on your breath, or maybe you're trying to focus on something such as, journaling or schoolwork or reading. And things are going to float by in this river. So, a stick, a leaf, a raft. And these things that float in the river are your thoughts. So, what might they have thought about me as a stick that floats by? And what, gosh, I can't believe I said that. What am I going to have for dinner tonight? All these things, anxious thoughts and distracted thoughts and any thoughts, positive, negative, any type of thought is drifting through in this river. And you just want to stay focused. So you can look at the river and you can say, oh, look, there's a stick floating by. There's a raft, But you just want to stay. You just want to stay and continue. Go right back to what you're doing. It may continue to float around, but each time you give it a glance and then you let it float by. And I guess the opposition to that would be, or a metaphor for rumination would be you jump in after the stick and now you're swimming through the river. But if that's the case, you just get back out and you sit back down on the banks. Yeah. And so I do recommend then kind of going back to what you're doing and focusing on your breath, on your activity, and just watching the things float by. And that's sort of an analogy for what mindfulness is. Do you ever practice mindfulness? Yeah. It definitely is hard. But just keep in mind, that's another thing that's really helpful, is to keep in mind the analogy. Sometimes you have a thought, you're very close to your thought. You feel like you are that thought, you are that emotion. But if you can kind of imagine it's floating by in a river, you can easily remind yourself. Yeah. And then there's another exercise I'd like to tell you about. You can stop me if you've heard of this one before, but it can be really helpful for if you're feeling overwhelmed or anxious, is a grounding exercise. Have you ever done a grounding exercise? Yeah. Well, you might have heard of this one before. But basically, it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So, you look around so this is for when you're feeling anxious. You stop and you look around for 5 things you can see. And it's best if you do this like slowly and in detail. So you're not just like, oh, I see a jacket, a unicorn, a light. You're like, oh, I see a soft rainbow unicorn. I see multicolored lights that are red, green, yellow. Okay, yes. I'm like making sure that that's actually what's behind me. I know I've done this one quite a bit, so yeah, you list 5 things you can see. The next is you say 4 things you can feel. So, I feel a soft, pilly sweater, etc. Might feel my jeans. You might feel your blanket there. Yeah. The next one is sounds. So 3 things you can hear. And it's actually very interesting. You'll start to hear things you weren't really paying attention to before. You might, but you might also not. I hear the fridge buzzing. I hear the cars outside. I hear people talking. I hear pages turning. Even if you're in a totally silent room, it's things you can hear. So you can like lightly tap your table. You can listen to the sounds of your finger pads brushing together. You can play some music. So basically, as you're listening for 3 things you can hear, and you're naming them, labeling them. Then next, it's 2 things you can smell. That one's sometimes a little tricky if you're in a scentless room. Or if you're at home, you might be used to the scent of your home. But yeah, so, I smell dinner cooking, I smell freshly cut grass, I smell gasoline, etc. Or you can even smell detergent on my shirt, or smoke, or whatever is, residual on you. Yeah. And then the last one is, one thing you can taste, and there usually only is one if you're not eating at the moment, but it's like, oh, I just had a glass of green tea, so I can still kind of taste green tea, or whatever. Do you kind of get the gist of the exercise? Yeah, so do you think that could be helpful? You're not sure? Well, I say try it out if you like, or if you think it could be helpful. I'd love to hear how it goes for you. But yeah, it's a grounding exercise, so it's a great way to, if you find yourself spinning or having a high intensity emotion, it brings you back. It brings you back down, back into the real world. I don't want to say the real world. It brings you back to reality. What's here, what's physical, what you can actually see and taste. For those times you build up things in your head. Oh, what could I have said? What did they say? I see a tree. Okay. I see the grass. Okay. I see the sky. It's vast and blue and filled with clouds. And you start to come back, and see just what's in front of you and what can be touched and heard. And you come back to your body and your mindful breathing. That's awesome. And so we're almost out of time, but I'm really glad we got to do this. You can totally keep your paper. What was I going to say? Oh, how did the journaling go? Okay, good. Yeah, so just keep trying to do that. Journaling, drawing, writing, but basically just letting it flow when you feel an emotion, so no need to kind of make it look perfect or any sort of way. You're just trying to get out your feelings and make it tangible. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Just to quickly look at scheduling. Does this time work next week? Okay, perfect. Then I'll just write you down for this time. Do you need anything else today? Okay. Perfect. Well, as you know, always give me a call if you need something. And if it's urgent, after hours, I may not be available. And so definitely go consult your numbers that we worked on last time. So those kind of emergency hotlines and a support system. Awesome. You'll do that? That's wonderful to hear. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, then I hope you have a lovely rest of your week. Try out the exercises and let me know how they go. Okay, bye.